Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. Inside the Set is a series that focuses on the design and decor of stories that excite us and ignite our imaginations, where we get to discuss the collaborations between production designers and set decorators, and hear firsthand accounts of how those works of art came to be, from their inception to ideas on a page through completion, where we sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. I'm Regina Graves, SDSA, and I'm lucky to have with me today Andrew Baseman, also SDSA, to talk about his beautiful work on Severance, the AppleTV show. Andy, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Regina. I'm thrilled that you're here with me.
Yeah, I was so excited when they asked me to interview you. I've known you for a really long time, since my first days at Eclectic, and I've always admired you and admired your work. And it's such a great looking show. I love it so much. So much eye candy to look at. Hope you're proud of it. But let us just dig right in there. So most people love to know how you began in this business. Like how did you get your start as a set decorator?
So I guess you could say I was born in a trunk, not in the theatrical actor way that Judy Garland sang about. But my parents were antique dealers, and I grew up in an English Tudor style house in Short Hills, New Jersey, filled with antiques. And at the time, I loved being at my friends' houses who had split level homes with mid-century modern furniture and more Brady Bunch. But I eventually learned to love the antiques in my house, and as I got older, became really curious about them, and ended up working in my parents' shop and repairing and restoring furniture. So it was a great education. And when I was probably in my teens, I got interested in theater. And in high school, I was able to design sets and costumes for our shows, and eventually direct, in my senior year, a production of Your Good Man, Charlie Brown, which I also designed. So I just melded my two interests together of furnishings and theater. So I went to Carnegie Mellon and studied set and costume design, came to New York, started working for Broadway designers, and eventually discovered that I could do the same type of work, but make a little more money and move out of my tiny studio apartment. So I started to do commercials, which led to TV, which led to movies. And that's how it started.
I love that. So when you got the phone call for Severance, and how was it described to you? Because it's such an unusual story.
I got a call from the designer who said, come on an interview. I'd never met him before, but I heard of his work and I was eager to meet him. So I thought, if nothing else, I'll make a new connection. So I met with him in his office. And he described the show, and it sounded really interesting. And then he showed me his lookbook. And from the very first image, which I believe was the MDR sea of green carpet with the quad desk in the center, and then subsequent pages, just other green, mid-century modern and pretty much otherworldly images, I was totally hooked. And he said, well, read the script and take your time, just read the script and let me know what you think. And so I read the script and I was totally hooked. So I called him back and said, count me in.
The opening shot of Helly on the desk, that is so iconic, and there'll be decorators 20 years from now, like looking at this as a research for some other project they're doing. The room just looks huge.
It's a room where she awakens, the walls are padded. There's one door in that goes to the observation room, mm-hmm. where Mark and Irving are watching her on the monitors. So it's a smaller room on purpose, more womb-like, because she's birthed there. And the writer, Dan Erickson, didn't want her to awaken on a bed or on a sofa or something comfortable. It was really this very strange, jolting, like born right into the office kind of thing.
When you were reading the script, did you visualize it automatically? Or did the lookbooks help in visualizing it? How descriptive was the writer in the different worlds, the innie and outey worlds?
So the script was not specific to the style of the decor. The lookbook was pretty specific in referencing images from movies and artwork and just in photography. So just like the mood. But it took many conversations with the entire creative team to really pin down what these specific elements were. So it wasn't like I was reading the script and it's like, oh, I know the exact chair I'm going to use for here. It was like, okay, I need to find something that hasn't really been seen and isn't really recognizable, and then see what I could come up with that would be unsettling, because that's really, all the innie, MDR, Lumon world. It's all very unsettling. Even, especially something like the break room. Well, you think, oh, you're going to relax and have a cup of tea, but that's where you're pretty much tortured. Mm-hmm. So with all these nuances, we had to find things that were not comfortable, that were not easily recognizable, pretty much.
When I was watching the show, I at first, I wasn't really sure, is this modern day? Is it a period show? Is it set somewhere in the future? And then I was reading somewhere on Reddit, because there's so many Reddit, talks about the show, that, I don't know, someone zoomed into Mark's driver's license, where I think it says that he was born in 1978 or something, and that his driver's license, they even found the expiration date was 2022. So people were saying it was, like modern day. Mm-hmm. Is that true? Or were you just supposed to be, you weren't supposed to know what time period it was? Because everything felt so analog and so not contemporary.
Well, that was all intentional. The show was pitched to me as somewhat futuristic, like Black Mirror, where when you watch the episodes, it appears to be contemporary, but then the technology is a little beyond what we have today. So maybe even a few years in the future. So it was very clear that we didn't want contemporary cars or a lot of electronics, but there's a whole mix of periods, which is confusing to the audience. So I think we succeeded in confusing everybody.
Definitely. How did you source your furniture?
So it was key not to have iconic pieces. Since we are doing a lot of mid-century modern, I didn't want any of those recognizable Herman Miller, Eames, Knoll. I didn't want any of those that people would recognize. So the furnishings are more nondescript. Some of them I found overseas. Some pieces we had made, but it really was to not have anything too fabulous. I auditioned probably 6 different chairs for these, knowing these would be so important, and we just went with the most neutral one. And we also, I say this a lot, we got lucky that the chairs I found were gray with gray upholstery, so I didn't have to reupholster them. One thing I did here that I just did, no one asked for it, I just thought I should do it, were the pads under the chairs, the chair pads, because it's just kind of nerdy and vintage. I don't know if people use them anymore, but those, plastic pads so the wheels don't destroy the floor. Mm-hmm. I thought that would be a nice touch. The carpet was a really big deal. Mm-hmm. And those colors green are not very popular right now. I think, maybe in the 70s they were popular. Lily Pulitzer liked that color green for clothing. But yeah, that was hard. So we went to our carpet sources and had to find not 1, but 3 colors of green that would go together, because we use that theme a lot, where we have 3 different greens in the entryway. We did shoot the location at the former Bell Laboratory building. And so we recarpeted the entryway, that little pit there where Mark makes his entrance, in the same 3 greens. It appeared, as I said, in the conference room, and then we had it in the MDR, the huge room with all the green. So yeah, it was used many times, and many camera tests were used to get the colors right. And in real life, the colors are even brighter, but because of the lenses that Jess used, our cinematographer, things were toned down a little bit.
Everything is so green or blue. And my experience in the past are a lot of directors don't like, or DPs don't like to use green. Blue and green, I usually shy away from most of the time.
Well, green especially, I think, is not our friend, especially for wallpaper or wall tones if the actor's against it, because most skin tones don't look good with a green reflection on them. So I think that's one reason why.
And I love how you use the blues, like you said, the different colors to intersect and to make divisions. Was that purposeful?
Right. So the blues were for the unsevered world, and the greens were for the severed world. But Cobell's office, Milchek's office, those are blue, and those are, it just shows different rank in the team. You notice that the desks have very few things on them. I had dressed in a more natural type of set dressing, which would have pen cups and paper clips and Scotch tape and files and all those things that people typically have in their office. But as you can see here, Cobell has a pencil cup, a coffee mug, and to her left, you see just a little teeny brown object. That's actually a daguerreotype from the 1860s of Kier. So we had that created. You see it very briefly in one of the first two episodes.
Yeah.
And on the back credenza, there's a sculpture of Kier made out of found objects. So that was one of the crafty things she does at home that we'll see more of later.
Mm-hmm. It's really striking because everything is so minimal, but it tells such a huge story.
Mm-hmm.
And how our jobs, we have to create this backstory for a lot of these characters. And, it's hard when it's very minimal, but yet you do get the point across.
Well, it's tricky. And, you did such brilliant work on the Gilded Age, and that's certainly not a minimal period. And I'm used to working on more projects that have more things in them. So that was something I really learned on this, to really pull back and to not tell the story with piles of things. As you can see in my background, I have lots of things around me. So my desk does not have just a portrait of somebody and a mug. But I'm not going to show you my desktop right now. It's very messy.
But it looks great. So there are a couple of different things in Lumon. You have all these great rooms there. They're all so peculiar and odd in their own little way. Can you tell me a little about the different rooms and the design behind them, the decoration behind them? And what they all mean? What do these rooms actually mean? Like the goat room, please tell me what every room means. And what is its purpose?
Well, the goat room, if you read Reddit and other articles online, there's lots of speculation. All we were told is that more will be revealed in the next season. So it's not like I can't tell you, I just don't know. Mm-hmm. But I did hide lots of Easter eggs of goats throughout a lot of the sets. So attached to MDR, you see the restroom, which is pretty straightforward. And the kitchen, also minimal. There's 4 of everything, which we really push that image a lot with the 4 of them. To their left is the vending machine, which doesn't accept money per se. It accepts Kier tokens. So there's a little container with tokens. I believe you're allowed a few tokens a day to get whatever snack you want. And in the vending machine, the snacks are also unsurprisingly very strange. And the packaging is pretty spectacular. Our graphics designer, Tansy, did the graphics, and she just did an amazing job with everything, but we all loved the packaging especially. Also, an offshoot of the MDR room is the supply room. And since there's no security camera in there, there's lots of secret meetings that occur. And the plan for that was to not only have all of the reams of paper, which you see here, and the other supplies, all of the branded cleaning supplies, all were made by Lumon. And on the other side of the room, there are shelves with rows of outdated desktop items. So on their current desk, we have these little white lamps and tape and tape dispensers, staplers. Well, on the shelves, you've got like probably 40 years or so of lamps, staplers, tape dispensers, picture frames, because the picture of the 4 of them is so important. So I have, picture frames by the fours. So that was a lot of fun, just all these details.
It is. I love that room. I love the supply room, and every shot, it's just like a portrait.
So this shot here is key. So you can see by the wall clock that there's no numbers, which relates to the opening scene of Mark taking his watch off, and his outey watch has numbers, but his innie watch has no numbers like this one. So that was, another subtle difference between the two worlds. He just needs to know when his 8 or 9 hours are up during the day. So I think it's just another way of showing the divide between his two selves.
The O&D.
So for O&D, which stands for optics and design, this is the front room, which has lots of supplies and where the artwork is stored, and they do renovation, restoration on the vintage pieces. So the artwork was done by our scenics, who did a fantastic job. They hired a model, an actor, to be Keir, so his likeness is in all the paintings. And I think he's probably the most famous actor who's never uttered a line. He's only in paintings. So but the paintings were really important, and it brings these two characters together, obviously. They share the love for them. So we were also going to show rooms and rooms full of artwork in the original design for the perpetuity wing. So we decided just to have a few tell the story and have them throughout the hallways and leading into perpetuity.
The perpetuity wing. Did you have a lot of fun with that?
Yeah, perpetuity was always scheduled to shoot last. And since I was working on this for so long and doing all these minimal sets, perpetuity was what I was looking forward to the most, as far as getting back to my maximalism instead of my minimalism. So doing Victorian, I love that period, and I was excited to do that. Originally, we spoke about doing an entire museum, and so that would have been cases and cases of the history of Lumon. So I bought a lot of it. So I have hundreds of medicine bottles going back to the early 1800s, and artificial limbs, and just like everything imaginable that a company like Lumon would have produced over the past couple hundred years. So I had so much fun shopping for that, and I had some wonderful big cases all ready to go. The concept changed many, many times, and it ended up being just the bedroom, but it worked. It always worked. I think you could have a room full of antique artifacts, but if you just have one cabinet or one piece of furniture with 4 on there, it's going to be more odd, and it's going to be truer to our story. So, but again, with that, you have to have the right 4 pieces. Mm-hmm. So we had the bed, and the linens were important for that, the right color, the curtains. And the most important element, I think, was the table for the waffle party, because that's, that was the big climax of the episode. And so we had to have the right table and chair and all of the place settings, and ultimately the plate that said, go to the bed. Mm-hmm. And that's where the real party would start. So even that plate was very difficult, because we had to find a period plate and multiples and have it printed with the the text, but it also had to be non-toxic and safe, because the character's eating the waffles on top of it. So just getting all of that lined up was tricky, but it worked out great. And I would imagine those plates are very collectible today. So hopefully they're in good hands back in the prop shop.
I'm sure they are. It was a really great scene. And again, another one I was going, what is going on here? But I love that room, and I love the contrast between like the mid-century and going to the Victorian. It was really great.
All of the artwork throughout the series, as you know, we don't want anything just ordinary. We wanted it to tell the story. And so most of the pieces I had in that room were shadow boxes of hair. So woven Victorian hair, which was a crazy thing back then. where they would make, weave little pieces or braid them for jewelry, but they would also do bigger pieces with it. And so that was just part of the strange world of Keir. And he was probably experimenting, with patients, and this is their hair. So if you look closer, you can see some of those as well.
Oh, so fitting. So the wellness room. How did you put that together? Because I have to say, I loved the scenes in the wellness room. It always kind of made me chill out a little bit, especially after a long day of work. If I watched the episode that night after a work night, I really loved that room and everything about it, even though it was, again, so minimal.
Right. This was another tricky one that went through so many iterations. It started out as a very long room with, I think, built-in banquettes along one wall and lounge chairs, like two strangely overscaled lounge chairs. And then we had a bunch of toys to sort of continue with the infantilization of these four adults. And then we kept pulling it back. She has that little stool next to her that has buttons and levers, and that does climate control and sound. There's a vintage humidifier in the background, and then the driftwood sculpture on the table that has the camera in it. So Irving and Mark, they're unaware that they're being seen, but of course they are, because this is Lumon after all. Mm-hmm. Even the tissue box is branded with Lumon's name. I asked for those for the supply closet, and then we used them throughout. And then, we play a lot with these artificial trees. So that's not supposed to look realistic. The trees throughout, you see, a plant in Milchek's office. You see a sad ficus tree, I believe, in Miss Cobell's office. So those are all purposely artificial. And then it comes together during the scene with Irving and Bert, where they meet in the plant supply room. And so that is filled with just artificial and, again, purposefully artificial trees that show that, if you have like one tree in every other office, there's hundreds of trees here. So that's how big this place really is. So we show artificial obviously here, and then in the real world we have live plants and indications of plants that may be dying, or watering cans that show that those are really being taken care of.
The other thing that struck me are the hallways. It just seems, I've built hallways on shows before, but your hallways just seem to go on, and they don't look like they're the same hallway. When
Jeremy was discussing the concept with our writer, Dan said that they go on for miles. So that's been said a lot, but it's true as far as the concept. But in reality, typically you'll do a length of it, and then you'll cut, and then you'll happen to walk in the other direction, and then you'll cut and you'll put plugs in. We had an entire stage with hallways going all around the rooms. So it was built pretty much like a real office would have been. So off of these hallways are the various, the break room, wellness center, MDR, Cobell's office. It just keeps going and going. And the brilliance of the look, I think, is Jess, our cinematographer, was just able to change the look. This is a white hallway, but it certainly doesn't look like the same hallway, but it is. So it really is just between the camera angles and the lighting, just creating a different look. And it to me, it was never boring. You'd see them walk down the halls quite a lot, but it seemed every time they did it, it was just a different point of view, a different look. And I thought it was really successful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The cinematography and the lighting design is really stands out.
And also I'd like to give a shout out to my lead person, Ace, and her crew of talented set dressers who laid all of this floor. These were 12-inch square tiles, and the ceiling was a drop ceiling. So I don't know the count, but it was quite a feat just getting all that right. And when you do things so minimally and everything's white, anything that was off you would detect. and they really made it perfect. And Tommy, our construction coordinator, and his team, they all did an amazing job.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You could tell you had a really great team there.
Another example of taking a white room and through lighting, just give it just a really different look. This is the music dance experience, which is one of the most famous scenes in the entire series. And I imagine will go down in history as one of the craziest, weirdest scenes ever on TV.
I love Milchek. He's another great character.
Yeah. That cart that the turntable is on, I found that in Eastern Europe. And it was so unusual. The middle level pulls out, it's asymmetrical, it's wood with chrome, I think. It's just this very strange cart that we used for different scenes. Sometimes it has a TV on it, but at the end of the dance experience, he goes crashing into it, and we had to have another one made because I refused to let this one break and get damaged. So we had a stunt double made of it.
So the outey world, let's start with Mark. Again, the whole minimalism, his house, it's so minimal.
Right.
I mean, nothing, the bare walls, the fish. I love the fish. I was always wondering if he had a name. It just speaks volumes by just being empty almost.
Right. Yeah, that was obviously intentional.
Mhm.
Ben wanted to show the sadness of what he's become since his wife died. And it's a very lonely existence. It's a very pale blue, but mostly grays. And he doesn't even have curtains. He just has, sad lines and a sofa. We auditioned many sofas, and that was the winner. And if you look closely, the fish tank is severed.
And right in the middle,
Japanese fighting fish, so they can't coexist. So that's a little Easter egg, showing what his severed life is. So we want to show what he's become and why he chose to be severed. He doesn't want to live in this world of memories, of his happy memories of his former life with his wife. So the scenes in the basement, for example, show piles and piles of furnishings from their life together, which just by seeing them makes him so sad and depressed, he doesn't want to look at them. So he rarely goes down to the basement. But when Petey appears and he's living down there for a little while, sleeping on the sofa, you do see hints of nicer furnishings and boxes marked like holiday decorations and camping, things that they did together that they loved, and he just can't bear to look at those. So yeah, he has some nice things down there, but he doesn't want to bring them up.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is Mark's sister and her husband's house. There's such a big difference because, and I'm seeing it because he's severed, the sister isn't, and just the whole design aesthetic of it. That's another beautiful home.
So we shot Devin and Rickon's house in a community called Usonia, which is in Pleasantville, New York, and it consists of about 60 or 70 houses designed by Frank Lloyd Wright and his students. And this house was designed by one of his students, and it's a little larger than the original house we were going to shoot in, which was one of Frank Lloyd Wright's last houses. But this one gave us an opportunity to expand the scene. There's high ceilings here, lots of glass. But what's striking about this and different to the innie interiors, there's more color, there's more a lived-in look. And so we wanted to show that this was a vibrant couple. They have a new baby who they bring into this house. So there's life, there's real plants on the right there. There's other shots showing plants as well. So yeah, the details are showing that there's just, there's coffee table books. There's just, a fireplace with a real fire. It's how people want to live. It's not how Mark lives.
Well, it's another great house. And I picked up on all the pops of red, and I was, again, thought that must have been something intentional with all the primary colors, especially that stuck out to me and the abstractness of everything.
And this was the I think the first time we're in the house, he's invited to a pompous dinner party with no food. So it's an intentional foodless dinner party where they discuss politics and books, and all they do is drink water. And there's just one deco centerpiece on the table, and then everything around it just falls into darkness. So
I wanted to save Miss Covell for last because she is just the most interesting character. Her house, tell me about it. So we first see her in the first episode baking cookies for Mark. And so, but at that point, we just know her as his wacky neighbor. We don't know that's actually his boss. So you see her house, you see a little bit of her house, and the walls are turquoise. There's wallpaper in kind of a 70s vibe. Mm-hmm. So that's for people like peering into the windows and seeing this. It just looks really innocuous and just, you know, some nutty lady, you know, and her life. We were originally going to play her bedroom off of the hallway, so it would be on the first floor, and didn't really know how to reveal that. Then we were going to have it be at the end of the hall, so you see it. But this one, we went around with this and ultimately decided that she lives in the basement in a hospital bed that would have been from her orphanage before she became, you know, taken by the cult of Kier. And so this is and you can see there's like a water pitcher and basin with a towel, like in, you know, the turn of the century. Her bed is harsh and not very inviting. You can see behind her a little bit of a pair of dolls. These are like folk art dolls she made of Kier and one of herself. So above her bed, you see a sampler of the 9 disciplines of Kier that were hand-stitched by my PA Mallory. And off to the right, there's a teeny mirror and just, you know, a hairbrush. So just really minimal things that are very creepy and off-putting, but this is where she chooses to live. And later on, you see the shrine to Kier filled with miniatures. There's a miniature in cardboard of Kier's house that houses the perpetuity wing. And there's framed like report cards from her school. There's photographs. There's old like brochures and advertisements for Lumon products going back to the turn of the century. There's a little vial of nail clippings from Kier's nails. There's a little thing of blood. It's crazy time. The centerpiece in the center, that blue thing, that's like an oxygen tube from her mother's, like, you know, last breath. And I think after she goes nuts and destroys this, like she clutches it. So there's just tons of meaningful things in there that, you know, are part of her crazy world that, you know, we may never know what they all are. But even the rug she painted on the floor, the same pattern of the rug that's in the perpetuity wing. Now, the other house where you don't see much of it, but Irving's house, you know, Irving, he's kind of, you wonder like what his whole backstory is. And him in his painting studio. Yes. I mean, obviously he's painting that hallway to the room over and over and over again. Were those shopped out? Did your scenic department do all those paintings? Like, our scenics did the paintings. They did an amazing job. It was yet another example of what are these paintings and what's the style. It's got to relate to the ooze that I believe is one of the first few episodes where he has a daydream of the black ooze around his desk. That's the paint. And ultimately, the only time we see the room that he's depicting is when Miss Casey walks down the long hallway, pushes the elevator button, and you see that ominous red arrow going down. The thought behind this was that his apartment is much like Mark's, where it's a cookie cutter in a similar development. You do see a scene of it on the outside. His is brick, but it's just, you know, it's just a lot of the same inside. So we wanted to have this world bisected as well. So in the middle of his living room, he just puts down a drop cloth, covers the walls in plastic,
and has this makeshift studio. And we purposely wanted it to look makeshift. He's not going to buy art supplies from, from an art store. What he's using as canvas art, he's using like thrift shop paintings. He's painting on mirrors. There's some door cabinets, old panels, cardboard. It's whatever he can get his hands on just to keep painting the same image, to just exorcise the demons and just, get through whatever he's trying to get through. Mm-hmm. So, but if you look beyond this, you'll see all of his living room furniture just pushed against the wall. We did see Bert's house. Yeah. So this is pretty much all you see of the room, but we took over this location and that snow is actually real. We had to put a path in, and getting through the snow to put a stone path in was tricky. But we did an entire inside. We shot that in the living room, so we turned it into a bedroom, and you just see a little bit of a painting on the left, a very pale one, but it's a full-on bedroom with lots of details showing their life together. So this is all you see, but this is enough to tell the story of them, a bonded couple who are eager to go on a trip.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because the snow, while I was watching it, I was thinking, did they just get lucky? Were we in the middle of a snowstorm then? Because
I'm not sure if it's luck.
But even like the outside of Mark's complex,
yes,
it just always looks so gray and wet and miserable, but everything, it just looks fantastic. So yeah.
So that is all real. That was our first day of shooting. And you may recall that we had many huge snowstorms in March. I think that's when we started this. So once we established it, we had to continue. But because there was so much snow, most of our exteriors had all the snow. Towards the end, like when we shot the exterior of Devon and Rickens, we had to rely on artificial snow and effects for that. There was even a poor, I think it was a forsythia bush that was desperate to bloom. And every day we shot there, it was blooming even more. So they were throwing more artificial snow to cover up the yellow. But yeah, we got lucky. It was scripted that it was snowy, not a blizzard. But I think it adds to the bleakness of it, certainly. And when people are outside, you see their breath. It's not, fake effects breath seen. So yeah, it was, I think that set the tone.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. So one of the outey sets that was also really interesting was the greenhouse, when Mark is looking for Pete, and it's just so gray and everything is kind of in shambles. And tell me a little bit about that.
So the greenhouse was found by locations early on, and it was I think like a part of an orchard or a I don't know, some large farm that was about to be torn down, and because of COVID, we were delayed, and we kept praying that they wouldn't tear this down before we got there. So we got lucky with this one, and wanted a greenhouse without greens in it, so it's just lots of dead plants, and all those shredded, looks like icicles. That's actually a plastic tarp. The roof was covered in plastic that just shredded and just disintegrated. So that's what's left. And it's like, you couldn't plan this. Like if a designer wanted to design this, I don't know how we would have achieved it. But it's pretty spectacular.
So you mentioned Dan, the writer, Dan Erickson. Was he always on set? Was he really happy with the way things looked? Did he ever have any comments about anything or requests?
So Dan he was there. He was very much there. He was a presence. He looked like the kid that won the lottery, because he had pitched this to Ben many years ago. And I don't think he ever thought that it would become a series like this. So he was so incredibly kind and enthusiastic and helpful and appreciative. I just can't say enough good things about him, because he was, like I said before, when I asked for help of who these characters are, he dove into it so deep. for the book, The You Are, that Rickon wrote. He wrote, I think, like 50 pages of real text. So when the book opens, you see actual text, not just like a dummy book. So he was so into it. And just his genuine enthusiasm and kindness really was, it was really appreciated by everybody.
On another note, I can't help but see your beautiful background of all your pictures there and your antique collection. Are they part of your Past Imperfect collection?
They are indeed. I'm surprised you noticed them. They're so obscure. So I read a blog called Past Imperfect, The Art of Inventive Repair, which is all about my love of antiques with early repairs. 200 years ago, if a spout broke off a teapot, they couldn't glue it together because those kind of glues weren't invented. So they would take it to a tinsmith, or if they had more money, a silversmith, and they would make a silver or a tin spout. And they would strap it on or solder it together or staple it using rivets. So the pieces that you see behind me are part of my large collection. I also like to use them in my set dressing when appropriate. I don't put them into everything, but I do have some pieces as Easter eggs for for the shows that warrant that. So it's fun to find places for them in my work as well, combining my two interests.
Well, I love them. I think they're beautiful. And I have to say kudos to you and your team, the whole team, from the cinematography to the lighting to the design of it all, the decoration, your art department, your set dressers. I mean, it's just director is fantastic throughout, and congratulations.
Wow. Well, you are so kind. Thank you. I do want to give a shout out to my many assistants. As you know, no one does this alone. And in addition to all the really talented collaborators you mentioned, my assistants and my set dressing team were just incredible to work with. And it was a tough project because of working during COVID was very difficult, and it was a long project, but they got me through it. So just I want to make sure everyone knows how important our crews are.
Definitely.
Thanks so much, Regina. I really appreciate everything.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with Set Decor. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.